Hello Bookish friends. Today I'm here with my November wrap-up part 2. Before getting on with the books, I want to apologize for the voice because I have a sore throat, but I wanted to do this video as soon as possible because I have many things to talk about the books that I read in the second half of November. In November, I participated in 2 readathons. One of them was Beartown, where I read 5 middle grade books. Second readathon that I participated was non-fiction November, and I read 4 books for that readathon. Before wrapping up the readathons in November, I want to first talk about the books that were not part of the readathons. The first book that I have read in the second half of November, which was not part of a readathon, was a book that I was most excited to read it. Beartown by Fredrik Backman. I read this book as a buddy read with Veronica from We Reads and Rambles. This buddy reading experience was such a joy because Veronica and I think connected in a very different level about many things. It was a very good experience for me. The book tells the story of the lives of the residents of Beartown, which in a hockey town every sense as regards to economical, social and cultural life. A tragic event shakes the lives of every character of Beartown and they all react differently. First of all, I would like to point out that I think the synopsis of the book really destroys the reading experience of the book. I think the incident, which happens at 45% mark, because I looked at it when I was reading it from my e-reader, which I will not say if you somehow did not hear it and were living in another world. Knowing what will happen really destroyed those 45% of the book. And additionally, the first half of the book had a real slow tempo, but the tempo was really good at the second half of the book. I really enjoyed the description of the town and how it's described almost perfectly, and I loved the characters. There were so many favorite characters of mine. I really struggled with choosing which character to choose. When I was talking to Veronica, we said that I don't know which character is my favorite. I had different favorite characters for all sections of the book, so the characters were portrayed excellently. They were 3-dimensional, there were so many characters, but none of them felt one-dimensional. It was an emotional read most of the time. But when I was feeling emotional, I was interrupted by some of the sentences at the end of chapter breaks, and those sentences were either foreshadowing what would happen or trying to tell us what to feel about those events, and sometimes it directly described how a character feels, which was very annoying for an adult book. I mean, I find it annoying in middle grade books as well, but I mean, I tolerate it because it's towards middle grade children. But I'm an adult. I don't need anybody to tell me how I feel about something because I can see that. I can see how a character feels. So although I really enjoyed the general plot, the character development, the characters, and all the wonderful description of the town, I had to give this book 4 stars. As Veronica and I agreed, the buddy reading experience was fantastic. I liked the buddy reading experience much more than the book. Just because of that, I am very glad that I read the book, and I will also continue with the second book in the series because I really do wonder what would happen to the characters, which I love so dearly. The second book that I have read, aside from readathons, was called Amsterdam by Ian McEwan. Ian McEwan also wrote Atonement, which I am planning to read in the future. Although I gave this book 3 stars, I think there was nothing wrong with the writing style. In this book, after the death of Molly, her ex-lovers come to their funeral, and the book follows each of their lives, mainly Clive and Vernon. Starting from that point on, I gave this book 3 stars. And I like the fact that this book really touched upon the hypocrisy of the humankind and how we judge others, but we do not judge ourselves, and we have different standards for other people, but different standards for ourselves, and we try to find excuses for ourselves but not for others. I enjoyed those parts of the book, but the book had a very slow tempo. Characters were really boring, most of them. The ending was okay, so I gave it 3 stars. When we come to the readathons, for nonfiction November, I read 4 books. I included 3 of them in my mid-month wrap-up video, which I will link it down below. I read Atatürk'ün yazdığı Yurttaşlık Bilgileri for the prompt of design. It tells about the principles in which Mustafa Kemal Atatürk designed the new Turkish Republic. And I could not rate this book because I do not think that I would be objective enough to rate this book. For the prompt of sports, I read The Art of War by Sun Tzu, and I gave it 3 stars. For the prompt of truth, I read The Glass Castle by Jeannette, and I gave it the book 4 stars. And the last book which I read in the second half of the month was called Troublemaker by Leah Remini. It tells the true life story of the actress Leah Remini, and especially her association with Scientology since her childhood. I really enjoyed this book. It was so easy to read. I think the actress was brave and very sincere when she wrote this book. I did not know that she was associated with Scientology since her childhood, and I think it gives a fairly objective account as regards to her feelings, because she does not deny the positives that the Scientology brings to her life and the advantages that she took from being in that religion, if it can be called religion. And towards the end, when she questions some principles and the actions of the church, she becomes an outcast, and she tells her story very truthfully, I think. So I gave it 4 stars. In the Beartown readathon, I was planning to read 4 books, but I read 5 middle grade books. So I included the 5th book for Beartown readathon, and it fitted one of the prompts perfectly, I think. The other 2 books which I have read in the beginning of the month and also included in my mid-month wrap-up were Pollyanna by Eleanor H. Porter, which I read for rereading of my favorite childhood classic. I gave that book 4 stars and I enjoyed it very much. Second book that I have read was The Little Prince, for the prompt of reading a children's classics. I found that book to be okay and I gave it 3 stars. The third book that I have read for the readathon was Peter Pan by G.M. Barrie. I read this in the second half. This book tells the adventures of Peter Pan, the boy who does not grow up, and also lives with the lost boys in Neverland, and the kids of the Darling family. I had many picture books of children's classics when I was little, and Peter Pan was one of them. I read it once and I did not read it again because I was so annoyed with Peter at that time. So I was really excited to find out how I feel about this book this time. As an adult, I like this book better than I did as a child, because it did not just follow Peter, it also followed Wendy, the lost boys, the parents. And although I was still annoyed with Peter, the world building and the creativity of the author in that time really impressed me. So I gave this book 3 stars. The 4th middle grade book that I have finished in November was Grimm's Fairy Tales. It was the extra book. It was not on my TBR. I was listening to that book as an audiobook since the middle of October, and when I finished it in November, I decided to add this as a part of Beartown because it fitted the prompt as reading a children's book with a creepy setting. I now know why grimdark fantasy is called grimdark fantasy, because some of the fairy tales was actually not written by them, but put together by them, had very dark mood. Some of the events I think were horrifying when I think about it right now. I also gave this book 3 stars, although I liked some of the longer tales, such as Hansel and Gretel, Rapunzel, Rumpelstiltskin, and especially the 12 Dancing Princesses. I did not enjoy the shorter ones because it lacked character development, which is very important for me as a reader. But I am really glad that I have read it, and now I know why grimdark fantasy is named after Grimm's brothers. The last book that I have read in November, and the last book that I have read for Beartown, was my favorite book of the month, The Golden Campus by Pullman. I gave this book 4.5 stars and then rounded up to 5. In this book, Lyra tries to save her friend Roger, who is kidnapped by gobblers for their sinister plans, and goes on an adventure to the north with her newfound friends. I read this book for the prompt of a middle grade book with animal character. When I decided on my TBR, I chose this book because I really wanted to read it. I looked at one of the covers and saw a polar bear. So I thought, yeah, there's an animal character in this. So I will use it for this prompt in Beartown. But when I read the book, I was so shocked by how much it fitted this prompt. Lyra has a lifelong friend who can transform into many animals called demons. And I think he was one of the best companions that I have ever seen in a book. As for general thoughts, I really enjoyed the world building, the complexity of the world building, because aside from Harry Potter, in some middle grade series, the complexity is toned down because of the audience. I think Pullman explains the world so expertly that all middle grade audience and adults can visualize what is happening, although it is a fairly complex world building. And I really liked his character building as well, as regards to the main characters and the main supporting characters. But for some of them, I think they were a bit one-dimensional. So that's why I did not give it full 5 stars. But it was definitely my favorite book of the month. I'm so glad I read this book, and I will definitely continue with the series. Those were the final 6 books that I have read in November. Please comment down below if you have read any of these books. What did you think about them if you read it? Would you like to read it? And also, please comment down below what was your favorite book of November. Hope to see you very soon. Bye. As for Turkish word of the day, I think the word of the day should be campus. Since Golden Campus was my favorite book of the month, campus means pusula in Turkish, and pusula is our Turkish word of the day. Have a good day.